Captain Jake Martinez stared at the viewscreen as his ship moved through space toward the unknown. The year was 2157, and humans had finally learned to travel faster than light. His ship was called the UES Discovery, and it carried the hopes of all humanity. They were heading to a star system near Earth to explore new worlds and maybe find other life forms. Jake had been a space captain for 15 years, but this mission felt different. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of engines. His crew of 200 people worked at their stations while Jake watched the stars. They had been traveling for 3 weeks and were almost at their destination. Lieutenant Lisa Carter walked up to Jake and handed him a report. Lisa was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced, and she would handle any contact with alien life. She was smart and calm, and Jake trusted her completely. The report showed they were close to the Proxima Centauri system. Suddenly the ship's sensors began beeping loudly. Communications officer Danny Rodriguez looked up from his station with wide eyes. He had detected something massive ahead of them. On the main screen appeared a ship that was 10 times larger than the Discovery. It was black and silver with strange curved designs that hurt to look at. Jake ordered his crew to stop the ship and prepare for contact. The alien vessel sent a signal that their computers could somehow understand. A voice spoke in perfect English, which surprised everyone on the bridge. The voice was cold and smooth, like metal scraping against stone. The aliens called themselves Zephyrians, and they wanted to meet. Jake agreed, and soon a shuttle arrived from the alien ship. 3 creatures stepped out, and they looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. They wore armor that glowed with blue light and carried weapons that hummed with energy. The leader introduced himself as Supreme Commander Vextar. He was 8 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice made the air vibrate. He told Jake that the Zephyrians had been watching Earth for many years. Lisa stepped forward to begin diplomatic talks. She was nervous, but did not show it. Vexter looked at her like she was an interesting insect. He explained that the Zephyrian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. They had been expanding for thousands of years, and now they wanted to add Earth to their collection. The aliens invited the human delegation to visit their mothership. Jake wanted to refuse, but Lisa convinced him it was necessary. They took a shuttle to the massive alien vessel and found themselves in halls that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed and moved. In a giant chamber, they met with more Zephyrian commanders. The room was filled with the smell of metal and something else that made humans feel sick. Vexter sat on a throne made of black crystal and explained how their empire worked. He told them that humans were a primitive species, but they had potential. The Zephyrians would protect Earth from other threats in exchange for resources and workers. They would build cities in the sky and teach humans better technology. All Earth had to do was join their empire and follow their rules. Lisa asked what would happen if humans refused. Vexter's eyes grew brighter and his voice became even colder. He said that the Zephyrian Empire had never been refused by any species. Those who tried to resist were made to understand their mistake. He showed them images of other worlds that had been conquered. The pictures showed beautiful planets that had been turned into mining operations and factory worlds. The native species worked in chains under Zephyrian masters. Cities had been destroyed and rebuilt in alien designs. Children were taken from their families to be trained as servants. Jake felt anger building inside him but kept his face calm. Lisa asked for time to consider the offer. Vexter agreed to give humanity 72 hours to make their decision. He said this was more time than most species received. As the humans prepared to leave, Vexter made one final statement. He said that resistance was futile and that every species eventually learned to serve the Empire. The Zephyrians had weapons that could destroy planets and armies that numbered in the billions. No species had ever successfully opposed them. The shuttle ride back to the Discovery was silent. Jake and Lisa both knew that humanity faced the greatest challenge in its history. When they reached their ship, Jake immediately sent a message to Earth describing what had happened. On Earth, President Amy Johnson received the transmission in her office in Washington. She quickly called together her top advisors, including General Frank Miller and Admiral Kate Rodriguez. The news spread quickly, and soon the whole world knew about the alien ultimatum. Television screens showed Zephyrian ships appearing in Earth's sky above every major city. The ships were dark against the sun and cast shadows over millions of people. The aliens wanted an answer, and the whole world waited to see what humanity would choose. Jake stood on his bridge, watching the alien mothership. In 72 hours, Earth would give its answer. He hoped his species would make the right choice, but he feared what would happen either way. The Zephyrians had made their position clear, and now humanity had to decide its fate. President Amy Johnson stood before the cameras in the White House as the world watched. Behind her were the flags of every nation on Earth. Her voice was steady as she spoke to both humanity and the aliens. Waiting in their ships above, she said that humanity had always been free and would remain free. No species had the right to rule over another, and Earth would never bow to this Ephorian empire. She thanked the aliens for their offer, but humanity chose to remain independent. The broadcast ended, and the world held its breath. High above the planet, Supreme Commander Vextar received the message aboard his flagship. His yellow eyes glowed with anger as he realized that these primitive humans had actually refused his generous offer. In his thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever dared to reject the Empire. He gave orders to begin the invasion immediately. The attack began at dawn. Bright beams of energy shot down from the alien ships and struck military bases around the world. Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado was one of the first targets. Colonel Ryan Davis was drinking coffee when the sky lit up with deadly fire. The base's defense systems tried to fight back, but human weapons could barely scratch the alien ships. Ryan watched his fighter jets explode in the air before they could reach their targets. The plasma beams cut through buildings like they were made of paper. Within minutes the base was burning ruins. In cities around the world, people ran screaming as the bombardment continued. London's Parliament building vanished. In a flash of white light, the Pentagon in Washington was reduced to smoking crater. Tokyo's government district was destroyed so completely that nothing remained but melted stone. Dr. Helen Park was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She worked at a research facility in Nevada that had been built underground for safety. When the attack began, she was examining samples of Zephyrian technology that had been left behind on the Discovery. Her colleague Carlos Lopez helped her run tests on the strange materials. Helen noticed something interesting about the alien equipment. It seemed to have trouble working properly in Earth's atmosphere. The electromagnetic fields that surrounded the planet interfered with their systems in ways the aliens had not expected. She made notes about this discovery, hoping it might be useful later. The bombardment lasted for 6 hours. When it ended, millions of people were dead and every major military installation had been destroyed. The aliens had shown their power, and now they prepared for the next phase of their plan. Giant transport ships descended from orbit and landed in fields outside major cities. The doors opened and out came the Zephyrian ground forces. They were massive creatures wearing powered armor that made them even larger. Each soldier carried weapons that could melt through tank armor. The invasion force moved into the cities with mechanical precision. Human police and military units tried to stop them, but their weapons were useless against the alien armor. The Zephyrians moved through the streets like unstoppable machines, crushing everything in their path. But something unexpected happened as the aliens took control. Instead of surrendering, the human survivors began to fight back. In New York City, a police sergeant named Beth Adams organized the remaining officers into resistance groups. They used hit-and-run tactics to attack alien patrols. A schoolteacher named Steve Clark led a group of civilians in Chicago. They learned to make bombs from household chemicals and used them against alien supply convoys. The bombs were crude, but they worked, and soon the aliens realized that conquering humanity would not be as easy as they had thought. The Zephyrians established control centers in major cities and began rounding up human survivors. They needed workers for their mining operations and planned to use humans as slave labor. Large camps were built where thousands of people were held prisoner. However, the camps proved difficult to maintain. Human prisoners constantly tried to escape, and those who remained caused endless problems. They sabotaged equipment and refused to work efficiently. The guards had to spend most of their time watching the prisoners instead of expanding the invasion. In the Colorado mountains, General Frank Miller had survived the destruction of his command center. He established a new base in an abandoned mine and began coordinating resistance activities. His communications equipment had been damaged, but he could still contact scattered military units around the world. The general learned that similar resistance groups were forming everywhere the aliens had landed. In Australia, former soldiers were conducting guerrilla warfare in the outback. European resistance fighters were using the old subway tunnels under Paris and London to move unseen through their cities. Dr. Park continued her research in the hidden laboratory. She discovered that the Zephyrian biology was vulnerable to certain Earth diseases. Their immune systems had never encountered human viruses and bacteria. She began working on ways to use this weakness against the invaders. Carlos Lopez used his engineering skills to study captured alien weapons. He found that while the technology was advanced, it was also complicated. The aliens relied too much on their computers and automatic systems. When those systems failed, the weapons became useless. After 3 months of occupation, the Zephyrians sent a report to their high command. They had expected Earth to be completely conquered within weeks, but the invasion was taking much longer than planned. Human resistance was stronger than any they had encountered before. Supreme Commander Vexter was frustrated by the ongoing problems. His forces controlled the major cities, but vast areas of the planet remained in human hands. The countryside was full of resistance fighters who attacked his supply lines constantly. Every day brought new reports of sabotage and ambushes. The humans seemed to get stronger the more they were oppressed. Instead of breaking their spirit, the invasion had only made them more determined to fight. Vextar had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he had never seen anything like this stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Colonel Ryan Davis had escaped from Peterson Air Force Base when it was destroyed. He now led a group of fighter pilots who used hidden airfields to launch attacks on alien positions. They had learned to modify their aircraft with salvaged alien technology, making them more effective against the invaders. As winter approached, the resistance grew bolder. The aliens found themselves fighting on multiple fronts against an enemy that refused to stay defeated. They had superior technology, but the humans had something the Zephyrians did not understand. They had the unbreakable will to remain free. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian ships first appeared in Earth's sky. The aliens controlled the surface, but beneath the ground humanity fought on. In hidden tunnels and secret bunkers, the resistance had grown from scattered survivors into an organized army. Commander Tony Hughes operated from a facility buried deep under the Colorado Rockies. The base had been built during the old Cold War to survive nuclear attacks, and now it served as the heart of human resistance. Hundreds of people worked in the underground chambers coordinating attacks across the planet. Tony had been a Marine colonel before the invasion, but now he commanded fighters from every branch of the military, plus thousands of civilians who had taken up arms. His communications specialist Nina Torres maintained contact with resistance cells around the world using equipment hidden in caves and abandoned buildings. The aliens had tried to force humans into mining camps where they would dig for rare metals that the Zephyrian Empire needed. The camps were surrounded by energy barriers and guarded by massive robotic sentries. But the guards could not watch everyone all the time. Inside the camps, humans worked slowly and made constant mistakes. They broke equipment and contaminated or samples whenever possible. The aliens grew frustrated as their production targets fell far behind schedule. Some camps produced almost nothing despite holding thousands of workers. Dr. Grace Mitchell had been a weapons researcher before the war, and now she worked in a laboratory hidden beneath the ruins of Los Angeles. She had studied every piece of Zephyrian technology the Resistance could capture. Her team had learned to build weapons that could penetrate alien armor. The new human weapons used principles copied from alien plasma guns, but built with Earth materials. They were crude compared to Zephyrian equipment, but they worked. Grace had shown that human engineering could adapt alien technology faster than the aliens could adapt to human tactics. Paul Lee had designed cars before the invasion, but now he built war machines in hidden factories scattered across the countryside. His vehicles looked like ordinary trucks and buses, but they carried heavy weapons and armor plating. The aliens often ignored them until it was too late. In the ruins of Detroit, Paul's team had converted an old automobile plant into a secret weapons factory. They worked at night using power from hidden generators, and during the day the factory looked abandoned. The workers entered through tunnels that connected to the city's old sewer system. The Resistance had learned to move unseen through the world the aliens thought they controlled. In New York, the subway tunnels became highways for freedom fighters. In London, they used the underground to transport weapons and supplies. Every major city had its hidden passages. Sergeant Beth Adams led urban warfare teams in what remained of Manhattan. Her fighters knew every building and alleyway in their territory. They could appear anywhere, strike hard, and vanish before the aliens could respond. The Zephyrians had tried to map the tunnel systems, but humans kept opening new passages. A breakthrough came when Resistance members Danny White and Rosa Sanchez captured a Zephyrian communication device during a raid on an alien supply depot. The device was heavily encrypted, but human computer experts worked for weeks to break the alien codes. When they finally accessed the alien communications, the news was better than anyone had hoped. The Zephyrians were reporting to their home worlds that Earth was proving much more difficult to control than expected. They were requesting additional troops and resources to deal with the continuing resistance. The messages revealed that the Zephyrian Empire was fighting wars on multiple fronts across the galaxy. Earth was supposed to be a simple conquest that would provide resources for other campaigns. Instead, it had become a drain on Imperial forces that should have been used elsewhere. Nina Torres organized a global communication network that allowed resistance cells to coordinate their activities. When aliens moved reinforcements to one area, humans would increase attacks in another region. The Zephyrians found themselves constantly reacting to human initiatives. Dr. Helen Park had continued her biological research in a laboratory hidden beneath a hospital in Chicago. She had discovered that Earth's bacteria and viruses were indeed harmful to Zephyrian physiology. Working with a team of doctors, she began developing biological weapons. The first biological attack came when resistance fighters contaminated the water supply at a major alien base in Texas. Within days, hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers became sick with symptoms their medical officers could not treat. The base had to be evacuated and sterilized. Steve Clark had become one of the most effective resistance leaders in the American Midwest. His teams specialized in attacking the supply convoys that carried materials between alien bases. They used improvised explosives and captured weapons to destroy vehicles and equipment worth millions of credits. The aliens tried to protect their convoys with heavier guards, but this only spread their forces thinner. Every soldier guarding a truck was one less soldier available for other missions. The humans were forcing the Zephyrians to waste resources on defensive measures. In Australia, a former mining engineer named Kyle Turner had organized attacks on alien extraction operations. His teams knew how to collapse mine shafts and destroy processing equipment in ways that looked like accidents. The aliens lost months of work when key facilities suddenly became unusable. European resistance fighters, led by former police officer Marie Dubois, had learned to fight in the ruins of their ancient cities. Paris and Rome became battlegrounds where humans used their knowledge of local terrain to outmaneuver alien patrols. Every street and building became a potential ambush site. The psychological effect on the Zephyrian forces was becoming obvious. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds without difficulty found themselves losing to primitive humans using improvised weapons. Morale reports indicated that many alien troops were requesting transfers to other theaters of war. Commander Tony Hughes received daily intelligence reports showing that the alien occupation was beginning to crack under pressure. Supply lines were constantly disrupted and reconstruction efforts kept being sabotaged. The Zephyrians controlled the major cities, but they were islands surrounded by hostile territory. Dr. Grace Mitchell's team had made another important discovery. They found that Zephyrian equipment relied heavily on central computer systems for coordination. If those systems could be disrupted, entire alien formations would lose their tactical advantage. A new phase of the resistance began as humans started targeting alien communication networks. Hackers led by a young programmer named Kevin Brown learned to penetrate Zephyrian computer systems and plant viruses that caused widespread malfunctions. The aliens found their weapons failing at critical moments and their vehicles breaking down. During important missions, their sophisticated technology had become a weakness that human ingenuity could exploit. What had once seemed like an insurmountable advantage was turning into a liability that, as the first winter of occupation ended, it was clear that the war had not gone as the Zephyrians planned. They had expected to crush human resistance within months, but instead found themselves fighting an enemy that grew stronger with each passing day. Supreme Commander Vexter received increasingly urgent requests from his field commanders for more troops and better equipment. The humans seemed to learn from every defeat and adapt their tactics faster than the aliens could counter them. The primitive species was teaching the galaxy's greatest military power some very uncomfortable lessons about the price of freedom. The message went out across every hidden communication channel on Earth at exactly midnight Greenwich time. Commander Tony Hughes had spent weeks planning what the resistance called Operation Defiance. Every cell leader from Tokyo to New York had synchronized their watches and prepared their fighters for the largest coordinated attack in human history. Major Sam Johnson led the assault teams in what remained of Washington, while Captain Diane Foster commanded urban warfare units in the ruins of Chicago. The plan was simple but ambitious. Hit the aliens everywhere at once and show them that humanity would never stop fighting for freedom. In the Australian outback, Kyle Turner and his demolition teams approached their target in darkness. The Zephyrian mining complex covered 50 square miles and employed thousands of human slave workers. Giant machines extracted rare metals from the earth. While alien guards watched from armored towers, Kyle's team had spent months studying the facility and planning their attack. They knew exactly where to place explosives for maximum damage. The charges were made from materials stolen from alien supply depots and designed to create a chain reaction that would destroy the entire operation. At precisely midnight, the charges detonated. Massive explosions lit up the desert sky as the mining complex collapsed into burning rubble. The alien guards were caught completely off guard as their sophisticated equipment became twisted metal. Kyle and his fighters vanished into the darkness, leaving behind destruction that would take months to repair. In Europe, Marie Dubois led her resistance fighters through the streets of Paris toward the Zephyrian command center that had been built. Where the Eiffel Tower once stood, the aliens had demolished the famous landmark and replaced it with a black pyramid that coordinated their activities across the continent. Marie's teams moved through metro, tunnels, and abandoned buildings using routes they had mapped during months of preparation. They carried weapons built in hidden factories and explosives made from chemicals stolen from alien laboratories. Each fighter knew they might not survive, but they also knew their sacrifice would help free their world. The attack on the command center began with electromagnetic pulse bombs that disabled alien communication systems. In the confusion that followed, human fighters stormed the pyramid from multiple directions. The battle was fierce, but the aliens had not expected such a coordinated assault on their most secure facility. Across the Pacific, Lucy Stone-Lead captured alien aircraft in attacks on Zephyrian supply bases. She had been a test pilot before the invasion, and now she commanded a squadron of human pilots flying stolen enemy fighters. The irony was not lost on her that alien technology was being used to drive the aliens from Earth. Lucy's fighters struck supply depots and communication relays across Asia, while ground teams simultaneously attacked processing facilities and detention camps. The aliens found themselves facing attacks from the air and ground, at the same time making it impossible to coordinate an effective response. Dr. Grace Mitchell had prepared a special surprise for the aliens. Her research team had developed a computer virus specifically designed to target Zephyrian systems. The virus was hidden in routine supply shipments and programmed to activate during Operation Defiance. At midnight, the virus began spreading through alien computer networks, causing widespread system failures. Weapons stopped working and vehicles broke down as the infection corrupted critical software. The Zephyrians discovered that their reliance on automated systems had become a critical vulnerability. In underground laboratories, Dr. Helen Park released her biological weapon into the air conditioning systems of major alien installations. The specially designed bacteria was harmless to humans but deadly to Zephyrian physiology. Within hours, alien soldiers began falling sick with a plague their medical technology could not cure. The simultaneous attacks created chaos throughout the Zephyrian occupation forces. Communication networks failed just as bases came under assault from multiple directions. Supply lines that had been barely functioning collapsed completely under the coordinated pressure. Sergeant Beth Adams led her urban warfare teams in the liberation of Manhattan's detention camps. The camps held thousands of human prisoners who had been scheduled for transport to alien mining worlds. Beth's fighters overwhelmed the guards and freed the captives who immediately joined the resistance. The psychological impact of Operation Defiance was even greater than the physical damage. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were clearly on the defensive. Human attacks were no longer random acts of sabotage but coordinated military operations that achieved strategic objectives. Kevin Brown's cyber warfare teams had penetrated deep into Zephyrian computer systems and discovered intelligence that changed everything. The alien empire was facing rebellions on multiple worlds and Earth was consuming resources that were desperately needed elsewhere. The intercepted communications revealed that other species across the galaxy had been inspired by human resistance. Worlds that had been conquered decades ago were beginning to rise up against their Zephyrian overlords. The empire that had seemed invincible was facing challenges on every front. Supreme Commander Vexter received increasingly desperate reports from his field commanders. Entire regions had been lost during Operation Defiance, and the remaining alien forces were struggling to maintain control of even the major cities. The primitive humans had somehow organized a military campaign that rivaled anything in Imperial history. Carlos Lopez had established hidden factories that were now producing weapons faster than the aliens could destroy them. Human industrial capacity had been rebuilt underground using captured alien technology and salvaged Earth equipment. The resistance was becoming better armed with each passing day. The success of Operation Defiance proved that humanity could not only resist the invasion but could also take the offensive. Morale among human fighters soared, while alien troops began questioning whether their mission was achievable. Reports of desertion and requests for transfer increased dramatically. Dr. Mitchell's team made another breakthrough when they learned to manufacture their own plasma weapons using alien technology. The new human weapons were crude compared to Zephyrian equipment, but they were effective and could be produced in large quantities using Earth materials. Paulie's hidden vehicle factories began producing tanks and aircraft designed specifically for fighting aliens. The new machines incorporated lessons learned from 18 months of warfare and featured armor that could resist plasma fire and weapons that could penetrate Zephyrian defenses. Marie Dubois became a symbol of human resistance when footage of her leading the assault on Paris was broadcast around the world. The image of a former police officer driving aliens from the city they had conquered inspired similar uprisings across Europe and beyond. The aliens attempted to retaliate for Operation Defiance with brutal reprisals against human civilians, but this strategy backfired completely. The war crimes only strengthened human resolve and brought more recruits to the resistance. Every act of alien brutality created new enemies determined to drive the invaders from Earth. Nina Torres coordinated communications between resistance cells that were now operating as a unified military force. The scattered groups of survivors had evolved into an army capable of challenging the Zephyrian Empire on equal terms. What had begun as desperate acts of defiance had become a war of liberation. As reports of the successful attacks reached resistance leaders around the world, it became clear that a turning point had been reached. The aliens were no longer the unstoppable force they had appeared to be. Humanity had proven that with courage, determination, and clever tactics, even the most advanced enemy could be defeated. Commander Tony Hughes reviewed intelligence reports, showing that Zephyrian forces were withdrawing from outlying positions to concentrate on defending their major installations. The aliens were adopting a defensive strategy, which meant they had lost the initiative. For the first time since the invasion began, humans were dictating the course of the war. 18 months after the first Zephyrian ships appeared over Earth, Admiral Kate Rodriguez stood in the command center of Luna base watching the final preparations for humanity's first offensive beyond their home planet. The base had been built inside an old mining facility on the moon and now served as the launching point for the most ambitious military operation in human history. The intelligence gathered by Kevin Brown's cyber warfare teams had revealed the location of the main Zephyrian staging area on the far side of the moon. The alien facility coordinated supply shipments and troop movements for the entire Earth occupation force. Destroying it would cripple the enemy's ability to maintain their invasion. Admiral Rodriguez had assembled a strike force using captured and reverse-engineered Zephyrian spacecraft. The ships looked crude compared to the original alien designs, but they worked, and more importantly, they were piloted by humans who had learned to think like their enemy while remaining unpredictably human. Astronaut Elena Vasquez led the assault team that would land on the alien base and plant charges in critical locations. She had been working on the International Space Station when the invasion began and had watched helplessly as Earth burned beneath her. Now she finally had a chance to strike back at the creatures who had destroyed her world. Marine Ben Thompson commanded the ground forces that would secure the landing zones and hold them, while the demolition teams completed their mission. His Marines had trained for months in the low-gravity environment of Luna base and were equipped with the best weapons human engineers could produce. The attack began at dawn Earth time when the Zephyrian base was at minimum alert status. Human ships approached from multiple directions using stealth technology copied from captured alien vessels. The enemy sensors detected them too late to organize an effective defense. Elena's landing craft touched down near the base's main power plant, while Ben's Marines secured the perimeter. The aliens fought desperately, but they had never faced humans operating in their own element. The low-gravity and airless environment that challenged human invaders proved even more difficult for defenders. Expecting a conventional ground assault, the demolition charges were planted with precision born of months of planning. Every explosion was timed to create maximum damage while allowing the assault teams to escape safely. When the charges detonated, the entire alien base disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth. The successful mission provided more than just tactical victory. Hidden within the alien base was a treasure trove of intelligence, including detailed information about Zephyrian operations throughout the galaxy. The data revealed that Earth's resistance had become famous among subjugated species across dozens of star systems, Dr. Helen Park analyzed the captured biological samples and made a disturbing discovery. The Zephyrians had been developing a weapon designed to poison Earth's atmosphere, making the planet uninhabitable for humans while remaining safe for alien colonization. The weapon was nearly complete and scheduled for deployment within weeks. Commander Tony Hughes immediately began planning a preemptive strike on the facility where the atmospheric weapon was being prepared. The installation was located in the asteroid belt and heavily defended, but the intelligence from the lunar base provided detailed information about its weaknesses. The discovery of the doomsday weapon galvanized human resistance efforts around the world. Factory production increased as workers realized they were literally fighting for the survival of their species. Hidden installations operated around the clock, producing weapons and equipment for the coming battle. Dr. Grace Mitchell's research teams made breakthrough after breakthrough as they reverse-engineered more sophisticated alien technology. Human weapons became more powerful and reliable while defensive systems improved dramatically. The technology gap that had once seemed insurmountable was rapidly closing. Paul Lee's vehicle factories began producing spacecraft capable of interplanetary travel using hybrid human and alien technology. The new ships were smaller and more maneuverable than Zephyrian vessels and could be produced much faster using Earth's industrial capacity. The liberation of Lunar Base had another unexpected consequence. Among the alien prisoners captured during the assault was a Zephyrian commander named Kethva who had grown disillusioned with the Empire's brutal methods. He provided valuable intelligence about alien military tactics and weaknesses. Keth revealed that many Zephyrian military officers had doubts about the Earth campaign. The humans had proven to be unlike any species the Empire had previously conquered, and their refusal to surrender was causing problems throughout the Imperial military structure. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy confirmed that human resistance was inspiring uprisings on other conquered worlds. Species that had been enslaved for generations were beginning to fight back using tactics learned from Earth's example. The Zephyrian Empire was facing its first real challenge in thousands of years. Admiral Rodriguez began planning for the next phase of human offensive operations. The asteroid belt facility had to be destroyed before the atmospheric weapon could be completed, but the mission would require most of humanity's space-capable forces. Failure would leave Earth defenseless against retaliation. Nina Torres coordinated communications between Earth's hidden resistance bases and the growing number of alien defectors, who were secretly providing intelligence about Imperial operations. The network had become so sophisticated that humans often knew about Zephyrian plans before they were implemented. Kevin Brown's cyber warfare teams had achieved complete penetration of alien computer systems and were using their access to spread disinformation and sabotage critical operations. Alien commanders found themselves receiving false orders and contradictory intelligence that paralyzed their decision-making abilities. The preparation for the asteroid belt mission revealed how much human capabilities had improved since the early days of the invasion. What had begun as desperate improvisation had evolved into sophisticated military technology that could challenge the best the galaxy had to offer. Lucy Stone commanded a squadron of hybrid fighters that would escort the assault force to its target. Her pilots had become expert at using alien technology against its creators, and their combat effectiveness rivaled that of elite Imperial units. The students had learned to exceed their teachers. Carlos Lopez supervised the construction of specialized assault ships designed specifically for attacking the asteroid facility. The ships incorporated every lesson learned from previous battles and featured weapons systems that could penetrate the heaviest alien defenses. Dr. Mitchell's teams prepared the most powerful explosive devices ever created by human science. The charges would be placed at strategic points throughout the facility to ensure complete destruction of the atmospheric weapon and the research data needed to rebuild it. Production manager Janet Kim coordinated the massive logistical effort required to support the mission. Hidden factories across Earth worked to produce the equipment and supplies needed while avoiding detection by the remaining alien occupation forces. Mike Sullivan organized the complex supply chain that would keep the assault force operational during the long journey to the asteroid belt. Every detail had to be perfect because there would be no opportunity for resupply once the mission began. Supreme Commander Vexter received reports that his empire was facing rebellions on over 50 worlds, with more uprisings beginning each day. The humans had somehow managed to inspire species across the galaxy to fight for their freedom. What had begun as a simple conquest had become a threat to the very existence of the Empire. The Zephyrian High Command ordered Vexter to complete The Earth's subjugation, immediately using any means necessary. The atmospheric weapon represented their last chance to end the human rebellion before it spread further throughout the galaxy. As the human assault force prepared to depart for the asteroid belt, the fate of Earth and countless other worlds hung in the balance. The mission would either end the threat forever, or provide the aliens with the ultimate weapon against not just humanity but any species that dared to resist Imperial rule. President Amy Johnson stood in the rebuilt Oval Office as she prepared to deliver the most important speech in human history. 2 years had passed since the Zephyrian invasion began, and now she was about to issue an ultimatum to the aliens who had thought they could conquer Earth. Behind her stood the flags of a free humanity that had refused to surrender. The cameras rolled as she spoke, directly to Supreme Commander Vexter aboard his flagship orbiting high above the planet. Her words were simple but carried the weight of an entire species that had learned the true price of freedom. She told the aliens to leave Earth immediately or face the consequences of their actions. The ultimatum was not empty bravado. Human forces had achieved something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had not only resisted the Zephyrian Empire but had driven the aliens back and seized the initiative in a war that was supposed to have ended with swift conquest. Admiral Kate Rodriguez commanded the human fleet that now controlled the space around Earth. The ships were a mixture of captured alien vessels and new designs built using hybrid technology that combined the best of both civilizations. Human engineering had proven capable of innovations that surprised even their creators. The final battle began when Zephyrian reinforcements arrived from across the galaxy in a desperate attempt to salvage their failing invasion. Supreme Commander Vexter had gathered every available ship for one massive assault that would either crush human resistance forever or mark the end of his military career. Captain Jake Martinez piloted the rebuilt UES Discovery as it led the human fleet into combat. Against overwhelming odds, the alien armada was 3 times larger than the human force, but the defenders had advantages that numbers could not overcome. They were fighting for their home, and they knew every inch of the battlefield. The space battle raged for hours as human fighters darted between massive alien battleships like angry wasps attacking giants. Lucy Stone's squadron used tactics that no military academy had ever taught, because no one had imagined that primitive spacecraft could challenge the Empire's finest vessels. Dr. Grace Mitchell's weapons performed perfectly as human. Plasma cannons tore through alien armor that had been thought impenetrable. The technology that had once seemed impossible to match had been surpassed by human ingenuity and determination. The students had become the masters. On the surface, Elena Vasquez led ground forces in the defense of major cities, while Bent and Thompson's Marines protected the hidden facilities that supplied the fleet above. The battle was fought on multiple fronts, simultaneously as humanity demonstrated its ability to coordinate complex military operations across vast distances. The turning point came when Kethfer and his fellow Zephyrian defectors sabotaged the atmospheric weapon aboard Vextar's flagship. The explosion that followed crippled the alien command ship and left the invasion fleet without effective leadership. Individual captains began making their own decisions as the chain of command collapsed. Commander Kethfer had provided the access codes needed to penetrate the flagship's defenses. His decision to side with humanity against his own species represented something unprecedented in galactic history. The Empire's absolute loyalty was cracking under the pressure of humanity's moral example. Kevin Brown's cyber warfare teams launched their final assault on alien computer systems as the space battle reached its climax. Every Zephyrian ship found its weapons malfunctioning and navigation systems failing at critical moments. The Empire's technological superiority had become a liability that human hackers exploited ruthlessly. The boarding action that captured Vextar's flagship was led by Marines including Sergeant Beth Adams and Corporal Tim Jackson. They fought through corridors designed for creatures twice their size, while alien defenders tried desperately to protect their command center from the impossible human assault. The sight of human soldiers bursting into the bridge of the most powerful ship in the Zephyrian fleet broke something fundamental in Vextar's worldview. These primitive creatures had not only refused to surrender, but had actually defeated the greatest military force in the known galaxy. It was inconceivable yet undeniably real. Faced with the collapse of his fleet and the rebellion spreading throughout his empire, Vextar made the decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations. He formally surrendered to President Johnson in a broadcast that was transmitted to every world under Imperial control. His words were bitter but honest. He admitted that the Zephyrian Empire had underestimated the indomitable spirit of humanity, and had paid the price for their arrogance. No species in galactic history had ever forced the Empire to surrender, and the implications would reshape the balance of power among the stars. The end of the Earth campaign marked the beginning of the end for Zephyrian imperial rule. Species across hundreds of worlds rose up in rebellion, inspired by humanity's example. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia found itself fighting desperate defensive actions on every front. Dr. Helen Park's biological research had proven that cooperation between species was more effective than domination. The hybrid technologies developed during the war showed what could be accomplished when different civilizations worked together, instead of one ruling over another. Years after the surrender, Earth had become the center of a new galactic alliance dedicated to freedom and mutual cooperation. Ambassador Lisa Carter served as Secretary General of the Galactic Liberation Coalition, which included representatives from dozens of formerly enslaved worlds. The Zephyrian Empire had transformed itself into a democratic federation, with Cat serving as their representative to the coalition. The species that had once conquered worlds now worked to rebuild what their empire had destroyed. Redemption was possible even for former tyrants who genuinely sought to change. Captain Jake Martinez now held the rank of Admiral and commanded exploration fleets that ventured into unknown regions of the galaxy. His mission was no longer conquest, or even defense, but the peaceful establishment of contact with new civilizations. Humanity had learned to extend the hand of friendship instead of the fist of domination. The phrase human defiance had become synonymous throughout the galaxy with the right of all sapient beings to determine their own destiny. Schools on hundreds of worlds taught the story of how one small planet had stood against an empire and won through courage and determination. Commander Tony Hughes established the Academy of Galactic Defense on Earth, where beings from dozens of species learned the principles of freedom and cooperation that had defeated tyranny. The techniques developed during the Resistance were shared freely with any world that faced oppression. Paul Lee's engineering principles had revolutionized spacecraft design throughout the coalition. Ships built using human methods were faster, more efficient, and more reliable than anything the Empire had produced. Innovation flourished when minds were free to explore new possibilities. Dr. Grace Mitchell headed the Coalition Scientific Council, which promoted research and development across member worlds. The hybrid technologies that had emerged from wartime necessity became the foundation for peaceful exploration and discovery. The memorial built on the site of the first alien landing honored both human and alien casualties of the war. The inscription reads simply, "We remember those who died so others might live free." Former enemies stood together at the dedication ceremony, united by their shared commitment to peace. President Johnson's successor dedicated the new interstellar colony ship UES Liberty as it prepared to depart for an unexplored galaxy. The ship carried 10,000 volunteers from multiple species who would establish humanity's first colony beyond the Milky Way. They took with them the lessons learned during Earth's darkest and most triumphant hours. The final message, transmitted from the US Liberty as it entered hyperspace, was broadcast throughout the galaxy. The words were simple, but their meaning was understood by every being who had ever yearned for freedom. Those who would rule through fear will always underestimate the power of the living spirit, and they will always fail. Earth's children now traveled to the stars not as conquerors but as guardians of liberty. The species that had refused to bow to tyranny carried its message of hope to every corner of the universe. Freedom was not just humanity's birthright, but the natural state of all intelligent life, and no force in creation could ultimately suppress it.